Birds are singing in the trees, all the leaves are falling in the breeze. The views all around are the best you've seen, living on the land.
My name is Paul Kouris. I'm the inventor and proprietor of the Kouris Centri-Turbine generator, the world's first patented rotational kinetic energy vortex turbine. What that means is a turbine that operates out of the spin of water, not its fall. And of course that's a very big distinction between conventional turbines, because conventional turbines all work from water coming down under pressure and turning the blades. The Kouris Centri-Turbine generator, it works from the spin of water, from rotational kinetic energy. And to give you an example of what I mean, let's just say you've got a conventional water wheel that spins in a river, as has been doing for thousands of years to create energy. Of course, half of it must always be out of the water. But with a vortex turbine, because it's working vertically, it's working inside the vortex, all the blades are now working. And with that same flow of water, you're making, if you like, twice the energy. You've increased the efficiency 100%. And this is really the essence of the idea, is to put a turbine into a vortex and allow that vortex to be your engine. That vortex becomes the power source. It drives the turbine, it makes electricity. When did I conceive the idea? Well, the idea came to me in 1975 when I was at university studying law, talking with some friends of mine about alternative energy, talking about solutions to the world energy crisis. I washed some dishes in a sink and had my eureka moment, literally. A little voice said to me, well, there's your answer. There's the practical perpetual motion, and I use that word advisedly, not scientifically speaking. We know that perpetual motion doesn't exist scientifically, but practically. The power of the sun. Wave power, wind blows perennially. And of course, a vortex, which is generated by the spin of the earth, is one of those examples. It's amazing what we keep. What you're looking at here is the original drawing that I put together after my meeting with those students. But the concept was as simple as that. I then had to build a proof of concept. But it took me some 20 years before I got around to doing it, because, to be quite candid, I didn't know who to tell. And one day, I'm reading the newspaper, is an ad that looks like it's been put there by the Almighty himself, and it says, have you been carrying around an idea for 20 years and don't know who to tell? Come to the Invention Submission Corporation. And so in 1996, almost 20 years to the day, the journey begins to get a patent and to build a proof of concept. I decided to do that out of my property here at Kalorama, and what you're looking at here is something that every schoolboy does with a couple of Coke bottles: create a vortex in a bottle, a tornado in a bottle. There's your vortex. The Kouris Centri-Turbine generator. Centri stands for centripetal, because it's the energy moving inwards into the centre point of the vortex. So this is what we're harnessing, this is our engine. And the idea was to build a vortex chamber on my property that would contain a vortex. Inside that vortex we were to put a turbine. That turbine was to spin as the water drained out of the vortex to create electricity. Now, when I had my managing engineer with me for this experiment, a man called David Sattler, he has a Masters of Engineering from the United States, David and I built our vortex chamber, and the first point was to create a vortex. When we drained the vortex, we found that we had lost 75% of our flow rate. Well, of course, my engineer was devastated. Why did the vortex create a decrease in flow rate? It's because Pythagoras told us the shortest distance between 2 points in a straight line. I'm making the water go in a circle. So although it flows out of the bottle quite well, it's moving in a circle, and because it's moving in a circle, it takes longer to get to the exit point. It won't work. But I insisted that the secret was not so much in the vortex. the secret was in the impeller. Because when I had that voice in my head so many years ago telling me, there's your answer, there's your practical perpetual motion, there's your engine, there's your energy source, it was always in terms of harnessing it with an impeller. So my engineer said to me, well, you better find an impeller. Well, I came back with an air fan, an exhaust fan that lay flat on the table, but when it was turned on or put into position, it looked like, and this is the museum piece, look at this. Now this is actually my first impeller that I put into my vortex chamber on my property. This is something that drives a motor, not something that is driven by a motor. We had a shaft rising from the impeller coming out of the vortex chamber. To that was attached a generator, and that generator made electricity. And this is why my engineer said putting an impeller in there is not a good idea, because that's going to be a friction device. That will slow down the flow rate. But to everyone's astonishment, that little voice was right. When I put the impeller into the vortex, it went from 10 litres a second to 48 litres a second. In other words, the impeller created such an efficiency that we increased the output by about 27%. And all that was being done by harnessing the vortex. And we got to use the water twice, in other words, once in the spin and once in the fall. We created our first proof positive that a vortex is powerful to move more than its own weight, and indeed can be the world's saving grace for energy during the energy crisis. In 2004, I constructed my proof of concept at Kalorama. It demonstrated conclusively that the vortex could be harnessed to create electricity, but more importantly, you could create an efficiency in that system so that you could use the water twice, once in the spin and once in the fall, which meant that you could either use it as a standalone system in, say, a waterway, where you were harnessing the flow of water into the vortex chamber from the river and then passing it back into the river, and because the flow rate wasn't being interfered with, you could have a number of these things sequentially in the river, or alternatively you could do it as a retrofit into an existing hydro scheme where you could use it upstream of the dam or within the dam before it left, the water left the dam to go to the power station. Allow me to introduce you to my brochure. This is the Centri-Turbine generator brochure. As it says here, an improved hydroelectric power generator operated using the kinetic energy created by the Earth's rotation. Interestingly, this is a picture of our first vortex that we built for Marysville. This is the Marysville vortex, in fact, and inside that we put our turbine to create the electricity that I mentioned, electricity that could power a conventional home by making over 10 kilowatt hours per day. So this brochure does contain these sorts of details. It contains the waterway system, it contains the reservoir system, something that can be used either in conjunction with an existing hydro system to make it work more efficiently, to create more electricity with the same water, or as a standalone in waterways. What you're looking at now is the dam or reservoir embodiment of the KCT, and look, there is the system within the vortex. The retrofit idea is to attach a pipe to that pipe that runs into the dam, creates an elbow that gives you a high-low pressure area to enable the vortex to form naturally, and it flows out of the system into the pipe that's a retrofit to the conventional hydro scheme. That's your conventional pipe going down into the power station. And probably from a practical viewpoint, a standalone system is far more easy to implement because you don't need a hydro scheme that's already in existence to do a big retrofit. You can just put these systems into the waterway. Ultimately, we found the waterway at Stevenson's Falls in Marysville. Downstream from there was a weir that had been decommissioned many years ago, and we got permission to put the Centri-Turbine generator into this weir. And the Marysville project enabled us to demonstrate that by using a very small amount of water, we only used 110 litres a second, and we had only 60 centimetres of fall to use. We produced over 10 kilowatt hours a day. Now that's enough to power a conventional home. A phenomenal result. It was a real possibility from which electricity could be made to address the energy crisis without really damming any more rivers, cutting down any more trees, or building any more power stations. This was something that could be harnessed by ordinary people all over the world very easily. So if you can create a system whereby the same water comes out as what goes into the system, it means you can have them sequentially down a river. Civilization has always addressed waterways as being the source of life. That's where they have been built. And consequently, there are so many places around the world that may be too far away from the grid to be able to empower themselves. Well, this is an answer to that problem. This system will enable the third world and the world generally to create clean, green electricity by simply harnessing the power of the earth. So we've built Marysville. The Marysville pilot plant has demonstrated that yes, this idea is available to harness the energy of a vortex, but we've only got a domestic model. We've only got something that is powering one house. Ideally, we want something to power a village, to power a town, to power many houses in an area that can't access the national grid in the conventional way.
I mean, this is just an egg beater in reverse and a generator on top. It's very simple. It really, in its simplicity, what it means now is that poor people in Asia can put one of these in a little waterway or a creek and power their homes, irrigate their fields, light their homes, feed their kids. And you don't need a big hydro scheme. You don't need to flood a valley.